Hey guys, I'm Titi.
And I'm Beck.
And we're what the kids call woke or whatever.
Ok, ça fait vraiment longtemps.
It's been a minute.
Glad to be back. How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel ready. Like we took a nice little hiatus. We're back for who knows how long, but we're back. Yeah.
Ok, so on est vraiment content d'enregistrer aujourd'hui et je suis vraiment contente d'introduire le sujet qu'on a pour vous. On va parler en fait de ce qui se passe présentement en Palestine. Donc, durant le dernier mois et demi, il y a eu une résurrection un peu de la discussion autour de ce qui se passe en Palestine avec Israël à cause brièvement d'une menace qu'il y a eu contre un quartier palestinien qui se trouve dans l'est de Jérusalem. So, Shaki Jarrah, dans le fond, l'État d'Israël les menace de les faire se déplacer. Et c'est des gens qui se sont déjà fait déplacer. Donc, la première fois quand l'État d'Israël a été créé en 1948, c'est des gens qui ont été déplacés dans ce quartier-là qui était un territoire vacant, mais que les Israéliens own. Et là, on menace encore de les faire se déplacer encore. Puis ça a refait une résurgence de la discussion sur Palestine comme j'ai jamais vu. Parce que je pense que j'entends parler de Palestine depuis que j'ai comme 11-10 ans, vraiment depuis que je suis jeune. Mais que personne comprend ce qui se passe. C'est juste comme, oh, c'est compliqué. OK, comme, oh, it's a conflict. Mais c'est vraiment...
I really understood this year. That's really because even during the Black Lives Matter movement, when it really became a movement in 2014, that's also where I would hear a lot about Free Palestine. But this is really the year where I fully was understanding what's happening.
Ouais, je pense que c'est l'année où j'ai le plus compris.
Yeah.
Fait qu'on sentait que c'était vraiment important de faire un épisode dessus, mais faire un épisode aussi qui centre, vous nous connaissez, qui centre les voix noires. Parce que quand on parle de Palestine, mais il y a aussi les Afro Palestiniens. I just want y'all to understand that niggas are everywhere.
That's right.
Niggas are everywhere. So c'est pour ça qu'on veut parler de ça. Puis vous nous connaissez encore une fois, une invitée que je vais laisser s'introduire maintenant.
Hi everybody, I'm Samah. I am an Afro Palestinian. I have been living in Canada since 1991, and I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having this discussion. Yeah. It's the first time that I ever hear anybody checking for Palestinians, but more specifically Black Palestinians. So I'm really happy to be here to answer any kind of questions or just to chat a bit about my experience and our experience as Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for joining us, Samah. We're really, really excited to have you. Honestly, we really felt like it was important to highlight the voices of Afro Palestinians, and we're going to get into that a little bit later and talk about the erasure of Afro Palestinians and the Free Palestine movement, coming from pretty much all ends. But first, let's deconstruct a little bit for those that are completely unaware of what's happening or that want to know but are not really sure. Can you explain what is happening in Palestine right now? So
Absolutely.
Deconstruct that kind of for our listeners, viewers.
Sure. So as simply as I can put it, Palestinians have been facing ethnic cleansing since the creation of the country of Israel in 1948. So what happened in 1948, and this is what happened to my parents and my grandparents, is that we were forcibly removed from our homes, and we were made refugees by then to make way for a wave of Jewish immigrants. So that happened in 1948, but it is still ongoing. That's what people don't understand. They think it's a historical event, but it's been happening since then, and it never ended. What's happening right now in 2021 is that Jerusalem has different neighborhoods, and Israel is coming into these neighborhoods and telling the Palestinian Arab population, you need to get out to make way for immigrants that have absolutely no connection to the land or that don't have any ancestry in the land or anything like that. Basically being kicked out because of their ethnic makeup, because they're Arab. So that's what's happening right now, and it's illegal under international law. I have to make that very clear. It is illegal under international law, but Israel continues to kick us out of our homeland.
Yeah. And what is happening for it to resurface? Obviously, like you said, it's an ongoing thing. But globally and in the media, it's really now that it's resurfacing. Like Beck said, it resurfaces every couple of years. The last I've really heard of Palestine being talked about this much was in 2014, like early 2010s.
Yes.
So what happened for it to come up again, this conversation to come up again?
What happened more recently is Trump. He declared the city of Jerusalem the capital of Israel a couple of years ago, where Jerusalem has always been the capital of Palestine. So they basically made that move with the goal of Judaizing the city.
Yeah.
So they want to make Jerusalem a Jewish city. And right now, Palestinian Arabs make up the majority of Jerusalem. And the plan is to kind of kick out as many Arabs as possible to make way for a new population of Jewish immigrants. And that's why you're seeing it more and more, because the Palestinians are resisting and they're fighting back, and they don't want that to happen. And so the clashes that you're seeing happen is a result from Jerusalem being declared the capital of Israel.
Je pense que c'est la première fois que j'entends parler de ce qui se passe en Palestine et que people actually side with Palestine. Comme je trouve que souvent c'est both sides, and I feel like this time around, quand les gens qui was playing both sides were called out. We're like, we're not
it's
not
very
doing
much
this.
to me, in my opinion. Listen, like as a Black woman, as a Palestinian woman, to me, when people say that, I just think, okay, you're one of them all lives matter people. Like, that's what it comes down to at the end, because it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. If somebody comes into your home and you fight back, you have the right to resist, you have the right to fight back. So there's nothing really that complicated about it. So, but what I'm seeing right now, I mean, I'm as surprised as you. I was bracing myself when I was hearing what was happening in Palestine. I'm okay, c'est clair, okay. Les médias vont dire on est des terroristes, ils vont dire, tu sais, tout ce que j'ai entendu depuis que je suis toute jeune. But it actually sort of like pivoted a bit, like it changed a bit, and like seeing that, and I'm as shocked as you are. I'm like 10 times more shocked to see people actually view us as human. Which is like, you know, so rare. So rare. And what's important too is that I think we should mention it, we'll get into it, but like how the Black Lives Matter movement, in my opinion, was instrumental in that. It was absolutely necessary for the Black Lives Matter to get as global as it is, for people to start seeing les fils.
It's all interconnected. I cannot wait to get into that, because they're all interconnected.
Everything is so interconnected.
Pour rester dans un peu la façon dont on voit les Palestiniens, pourquoi c'est important de ne pas appeler ce qui se passe en Palestine le conflit israélo-palestinien. Comme depuis que je suis petite, c'est ça que j'entends, le conflit israélo-palestinien. J'entends Gaza, j'entends qu'il y a des bombings et j'entends que c'est compliqué. Like,
that's it. That's like the rundown, you know? A conflict kind of implies that there are two sides of equal power, of equal standing, who have a disagreement, who can come to an agreement. Like, it's very surface level when you say a conflict, but it's not a conflict. It's literally ethnic cleansing. You wouldn't call a genocide a conflict. You wouldn't call what the Canadians did here to indigenous populations a conflict. There was a clear imbalance of power. They used that power to oppress a group of people, and they continue to do so. Where's the conflict?
Actually, I was reading about this and I took many notes on that, because in 2021, the Human Rights Watch, they actually accused Israel of participating in an apartheid, like it being an apartheid, and they've explained that, and many people disagreed with that. But then there were reasons given that I thought was really interesting, and it goes with what you said about it's not a conflict at all. And there are three things that qualify for something to be an apartheid, and first is an intent by one group to dominate the other, systematic oppression by one racial group over another, and one or more inhumane acts. And what can be considered an inhumane act is denying people the right to leave and return to the country, expropriation of landed property, and creation of separate reserves and ghettos. So within those three, if one of those are there, it's considered an inhumane act. So technically, it does check everything that is part of an apartheid. And I thought it was really interesting that it was explained that way, because we look at it as like, okay, apartheid is South Africa, but it's the same thing could be said there. Like I was reading that there are 4 different populations in a sense. There is the ones that live in Gaza, there are the ones that live in East Jerusalem, there's West Bank, and then those that are Palestinians that are that have Israeli citizenship.
Yes.
And it's the way that the ones that are in Gaza have literally close to no rights and no freedom of movement.
None at all.
At all.
At all. My family, most of my family is in Gaza. My cousin, who's the same age as me, has never left Gaza. Never. She has never been allowed to leave. She has never, like, imagine, being in Montreal and you're just not allowed to leave Montreal at all for any reason. And your life is basically in the hands of your oppressors.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that movement is allowed if it's to quote unquote downgrade. So from West Bank to Gaza, you'll be able to move there. Yeah. Or from East Jerusalem to West Bank, you'll be able to move there, but you'll most likely lose your residency of being from East Jerusalem. So it's like movement is allowed if it's to downgrade, but you won't ever be able to move from Gaza to there.
Yeah. And nothing is promised either. If you leave, let's say you do somehow are able to get out, there's no guarantee that you can return.
Exactly.
There's no guarantee that your house will be safe. There's none of that.
Exactly. It's the chances of losing your residency are really, really high. And I was reading about that, and I was watching videos about that. And it's you're basically walking on eggshells on your own land. And like you said, in 1948, when Israel was founded, there were over 700,000 Palestinians that were forced out, but then not given the chance to come back in, giving them the chance to kind of grow the Jewish population. And then in 1967, they went and they took over more land, they wanted more land. So that's when they really started to infiltrate Gaza and everything. And it's we want the Palestinian land without the Palestinians
in it. Exactly.
So what do we do? Let's not extend citizenship anymore. Let's make sure that the refugees cannot come back, their descendants cannot come back, but we're encouraging Jewish people from all over the world to come, whether you've set foot in Israel or not.
And let's also kind of drive this narrative that the country was empty when we came. There was nobody there. That's I find a myth that's often repeated, that somehow Palestine was vacant, it was just open for business. No, there were hundreds of thousands of people who consider themselves Palestinian, who have heritage and culture, who have been there for centuries, my family included. And that's Palestinian, you can be white, you can be black, you can be Muslim, Christian, Jewish. It was a big melting pot of different types of people. But once the creation of Israel in 1948 happened, then the majority Arab population was.
Yeah, it's incredible. And with what you said about saying that there is a lot of vacant land, in 1950 there was the absentee property law that was established, meaning if the land is vacant, we can actually take over it. But the lands that were vacant was because just within the last 3 years,
ils ont déplacé gens.
So, but then that law was established in the 50s to be okay, so this is the law. There's the absentee property law, so we can take over this land, and it can now be ours because they left, but they didn't leave. They were forced out.
Yeah, it's a discriminatory law, absolutely.
Yeah.
Puis souvent quand on parle de ce qui se passe en Palestine, on parle souvent d'un problème de religion. So, les gens qui encouragent la création ou l'existence en fait de l'État d'Israël relient souvent ça à c'est la terre des Juifs, c'est une terre qui appartient aux Juifs, et c'est vraiment, me being Christian, this is literally c'est comme ça que je l'ai appris. It's literally this is their land, it was their land. Puis ça fait que quand les gens parlent contre l'État d'Israël, being a settler colonialism state, la réponse qui vient, c'est que c'est antisémite.
Yeah.
C'est antisémite. Puis même quand il y a eu des protestes, des manifestations à Montréal, Valérie Plante a tweet je vais vraiment lire le tweet qu'elle a dit. Elle a dit Montréal a la réputation bien méritée d'être une ville avec différentes communautés qui vivent ensemble dans la paix et la sécurité. Manifester est un droit, mais l'intolérance, la violence et l'antisémisme n'ont pas leur place chez nous. Montréal est une ville de paix. Elle a jamais mentionné Palestine, like never.
No. We're often an afterthought, you know?
Fait que c'est toujours genre, si on parle contre l'existence de l'État d'Israël, ça veut dire qu'on a une rhétorique antisémite, mais comme tu viens de dire, comme Palestine est un métro, il y a de tout, et il y a des Palestiniens juifs qui ont aussi été attaqués comme les autres Palestiniens. Fait que je veux vraiment que tu un peu clarifies c'est quoi, pourquoi il faut pas justement faire de lien entre nécessairement Israël et la religion juive, et comment aussi même dans les manifestations on les a vus, il y avait des juifs, c'est pas tous les juifs qui sont pour l'existence ou la création de l'État d'Israël.
Well, first of all, she's right. Anti-Semitism has no place in the rhetoric at all, and like we have to condemn all forms of like anti-Semitism, you know, anti-blackness, all of that when it comes to these types of causes. What I need people to understand is that the concept of Zionism is not the same as Judaism. Judaism is a religion. Zionism is a political ideology that claims that the land has to be majoritarily Jewish in order for Jewish people to be safe. That's the ideology. But in order to do so, to have a Jewish majority and a Jewish, how do you say, like basically to have Jewish people kind of be able to have political and social power, then this is the Zionist ideology. In order to do that, you have no choice but to oppress another group of people.
Yeah.
It's literally built into the ideology, and this has nothing to do with Judaism. Like, I cannot stress enough how much the Zionist ideology is using religion as a tool to divide us at the end of the day, because they convince people that it's a Jewish issue, when in the end it is not. Religion has been used in history a lot of times to justify oppression and to justify, like, we know this. So when people say, oh, it's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel, Israel is a country. Any country can be criticized. No country is above criticism. Israel is not a Jewish person, you know what I mean? And what Israel is doing right now, if you look at the facts, if you look at what you said and what constitutes an apartheid, like you were going through the list and I was like, check, 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 because they literally do every single one of those things that you just said on a daily basis. So we have to be able to separate the idea of a political ideology that uses religion as that manipulates people through religion and the actual religion.
J'aime que tu as mis l'emphase sur le fait que l'antisémisme est une chose réelle.
Ah, ben oui,
je pense que tu sais, quand on parle de, let's say, black versus white, like when you talk about Black Lives Matter, genre, when white people are whining, like on peut dire, like on peut vraiment dire que comme, and like you cannot be racist against white people, like it's not a thing. Mais quand tu parles de la population juive, comme l'antisémisme, c'est vraiment réel, et surtout le fait que Israël a été donné après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, j'ai l'impression que les gens se sentent vraiment comme torn. Ou genre comme...
It's emotional because like what happened in the Holocaust, we don't want that to ever happen again. And historically speaking, how it happened, the creation of Israel happened after the Holocaust for a refuge for Jewish people. That doesn't deny the fact that 750,000 people plus were kicked out of their home to make way for this new wave of refugees.
Je pense que c'est toujours la chose qui m'a fait un peu comme, mais je comprends pas, il y avait des gens. Like I never understood that part. Parce que la première fois qu'on me l'a expliqué, I was like 10, 11, et c'est mon prof, j'avais un excellent prof de primaire. C'était comme, ouais, il y avait des gens et on a créé Israël. Je suis comme, but they were people. Like, yes, we kicked them out. And I was like,
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't sound right.
Yeah, something's up. Like, even when I was a kid, I was like, well, why can't we go back to Palestine? You know, like, I didn't understand, okay, like, we're in Canada, but, like, my whole family's in Palestine. What's going on? Like, I didn't realize my dad, like, he escaped for a better life. Like, he was able to leave, and he had to make something better for himself, to work, to send money back home, you know, to try, because he was the oldest in the family, you know how it is. Like the oldest, always has that responsibility. So we left, and we sort of gave up. I mean, gave up, it's hard, it's difficult, but like we gave up our, like he could have stayed in Gaza in a basically a prison, or you leave and you risk that you can't ever go back and live there.
Yeah.
And you're stateless. Like, it's very complicated. It's like between a rock and a hard place, you know?
Ouais. Puis il faut aussi, on rappelle que comme Israël a une force militaire aussi.
Absolutely.
I think people are not aware. Puis c'est pas vraiment la faute des gens parce qu'on c'est pas expliqué non plus, c'est pas décortiqué, mais Israël a une force militaire qui est supportée par différentes personnes, différents pays, différents gouvernements. Juste le fait que c'est l'ONU qui a comme donné la terre à Israël. Et il faut comprendre que même un an avant ça, l'ONU avait demandé pour Palestine. Like, ils voulaient comme une partie de Palestine, puis les Arabes ont dit non. Like, I'm not giving it. Fait que là, le fait qu'après, encore une fois, cette terre est donnée, c'est genre, tout est politique et tout est relié. Fait que c'est vraiment important quand vous entendez les gens parler de ces problématiques-là, qui est comme, you pay attention, like, de quelle façon on perçoit quel côté.
Ouais, puis comme, justement, tu dis, Israël, comme ils ont le support de la plus grande économie au monde, qui est les États-Unis.
Yes.
Israël reçoit 3,8 milliards, billions of dollars a year to Israel to defend themselves against Palestine, a country that has no military, that has no army, that has no resources.
The people have close to no freedom.
Close to no freedom. And that's like, while we're talking right now, that's $10 million is going to Israel right now. $10 million a day. Do you understand? And that is all usually used towards their military.
Right.
Non, c'est vrai.
Right.
And when you have a military, you got to use it somehow.
Yeah. You were talking about having family in Gaza. So do you feel comfortable sharing how their experience is at the moment?
It's incredibly difficult. Thankfully, they all survived the latest assault by Israel. But it's trying to have hope in a hopeless state. Because like we were discussing before the show, they have to rebuild every few years. They have no choice. Some conflict happens, and then Israel indiscriminately, collectively punishes Palestinians. That's how they work. Like, if there is something that happens, let's say a rocket or something, a homemade rocket is sent from Gaza to Israel as a retaliation or something, then Israel will say, we're defending ourselves. And they send a barrage of missiles on the collective Palestinian population. So it's continuous collective punishment on all 2 million people that live in Gaza. There are 2 million people in Gaza right now. It's like the most densely populated, I think, area in the world. So it's literally a cage. That's what they're living in. I have had the opportunity actually to visit Gaza.
Really?
I have been twice. Last time in 1999 was the last time I was allowed to go. I was a child. I was so young when I went, but I remember the treatment. I remember how I was looked at. I remember the soldiers who basically your life was in their hands. So I can only imagine what my family is going through every single day living in Gaza.
And for the listeners, there's, in terms of the way that the Palestinians are, like I said earlier, there's 4 categories, and Gaza is the worst treated. Now just above that there's the West Bank, there's just above that there's East Jerusalem, and then above that there's the Palestinians with Israeli citizenship. And just to understand how bad it is for those that are in Gaza, even the Palestinians that have Israeli citizenship that are technically, let's say, when we're looking at the hierarchy of these places, they're at the top, they have so many limitations as well. For example, let's say if they were to get married, they can't even pass their Israeli citizenship to their spouse.
Yeah.
You know, that's where most of them end up just leaving. So when you're looking at that scale, the ones in Gaza have close to no rights at all.
It's pretty much an open air prison.
Yeah.
That's what, like, I'm sure a lot of people hear that, oh, it's an open air prison. What does that mean? Basically, since 2007, Israel has imposed a blockade on Gaza. So there's nothing going in or out that Israel does not approve of.
Yeah.
And they are literally, like on the map, they are, on one side is Israel, they share a border with Egypt, and on the other side is the sea. Okay. And they can't leave anywhere at all. They, like you said, they have no freedom of movement. So it really is, imagine, like, they put borders around Montreal and they're like, you cannot leave.
Stuck here.
You're stuck here and that's it. Unless there's like some extraordinary circumstance where you need to leave, where you have to apply to leave, and like, it's very difficult.
Est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui essaient de s'enfuir en Égypte since like they share a border?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens.
Est-ce que like, est-ce que c'est genre the country, est-ce que genre l'Égypte est ouvert?
Well, Egypt also has to kind of tiptoe around the fact that Israel is the power there. Like, so it's difficult for Egypt politically to move. Like, they can't open their border up to Gaza. And like I said, there's a blockade there. So Israel imposed the blockade on the Gazan people, and that's like all around.
Yeah.
It's a prison. It is a prison. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, everything, because there's a blockade, like electricity is supplied by Israel, the food is supplied by Israel. You know, like my cousin, they get like maybe 4 hours of electricity a day. So if they're lucky, like some days they just don't even have electricity. The food is very meager. The situation is just very bad. And I think even recently, Gaza as a whole was considered uninhabitable.
Yeah.
And yet there are 2 million people living there.
Yeah. I think, je pense que that's why it's so important que comme il y ait une attention mondiale comme ça. Because en Afrique du Sud, what made like the apartheid kind of like not disappear, but the fact that people knew, when people know, and when there's a general care of, well, this is happening and that doesn't make no sense, c'est vraiment plus facile de mettre la pression sur les gouvernements and actually allow people to have like rights. Parce que tu dis que like there's no electricity, there's no like food, everything is controlled. This is like, c'est comparable.
Like when you hear it like that, there's nothing complicated about that. Like,
aucunement, c'est pas compliqué.
You're not going to try to convince me that 2 million Gazans, my people, are they're all terrorists and they're all out for blood and they all want to, like do something. Like, that's how the media sort of portrays us.
Yeah.
Ce qu'ils font, like, what the media does a lot, c'est quand ils parlent d'une guerre or whatever, they're always like, oh, think about the children. So they... Yeah. They often going to say, oh, think about the children.
They pull on like the sensitivity chords, you know?
And they talk about the children in both sides, but I don't think the children... Je pense pas que les enfants qui sont en Israël vivent la même chose que les enfants en Palestine.
Let's talk about the children. Do you know what the population of children in Gaza is?
I don't.
I really don't.
The percentage-wise?
I don't.
Would you care to guess? I mean, just throw a number out there. Of children.
30%?
20%?
30%?
So 50% of the population in Gaza are children.
Really?
Literally half the population are under 18.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so when you hear about bombing in Gaza, when you hear about the "we are defending ourselves" rhetoric, remember that 50% of the people they're defending themselves against are children.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Moi non plus, je savais vraiment pas.
I got goosebumps, yo.
So, yeah, you have to remember those kinds of things, and I cannot even tell you how many children the Israeli Defense Forces arrests every day.
Yeah.
They are literally arrest indiscriminately, and I'm not even telling you about like 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, which they do every day. They arrest 7-year-olds, they arrest 8-year-olds. I just saw a video the other day of them literally going into an elementary school and taking a girl out and arresting her. And what they do is they have a practice that's in their laws, which is like, it's called administrative detention, détention administrative, where they literally can arrest you without charge and without telling you why they're arresting you, and indefinitely for as long as they want. And that is literally what they do every day.
What would you say is the main reasons that people are getting arrested? Like children, like is it just
they're Arab.
just randomly that they're
because they're Palestinian? Yeah,
just for that reason. Yeah,
because they're Palestinian, and in their mind, Palestinians have to be controlled, have to be, like when you live in an oppressive state, why do people oppress? It's because to show you they have a power over you.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a mental thing as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're 14 years old now in Gaza, you've already been through like 4 different wars.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But wow, I really didn't know about the 50%.
Moi non plus.
That's incredible.
And most of the population in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, not most, sorry, but a large percentage are children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that explanation. Thank you very much. Now let's get into a lot of Black people are reluctant to show support for Palestine. I've spoken to many that were like, I don't really know. And I think one of the main reasons that a lot of Black people, and when I say Black people, I'm talking about non-Palestinian Black people, that are saying, I don't really want to do this. And we also see a lot of entitlement coming from non-Black people kind of using the Black Lives Matter movement as a stepping stone or as a comparison, y'all cared about Black Lives Matter, but y'all don't care, but y'all are not saying anything about Palestine. When it's you guys, it's this, but then when it's us, it's that. So a lot of Black people don't feel comfortable showing support. So do you kind of want to get into that a little bit, and like where do you think that's coming from, and why do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement is being used as a comparison?
Well, that's because like Black people have a history for showing up for people, and then when it turns around, it's like crickets,
Yeah.
So like I totally get that. The thing about Black Lives Matter, and what I said earlier, is that I really believe that it was instrumental in kind of taking off the veil of just how racist this fucking earth is. It started off with the United States, but they started talking about systemic racism, and people started understanding more. But the thing about systemic racism, and the system is global.
Yep.
It doesn't end at a border. It doesn't end like at the Canada-US border, obviously. And it doesn't, it's a global thing. So you have to understand, like, we know Black people are everywhere. You said it. And if Black people are everywhere, that means anti-Blackness is everywhere as well. Which means that the systems in place that oppress people are all linked, and which means that to show up for Palestinian cause is also showing up for your own cause, because, like we said, it's all part of the same systemic, institutionalized, global sort of like oppression that we all face. And Palestinians have been showing up for Black lives for a while now.
Yeah.
And we've always had interconnectedness, and we're always linked in our oppression and in our resistance. Ever since, like, before we were born, like, since the Black Panther Party was founded.
Yes. Yeah. It goes way back.
In the United States, I mean, one of the co-founders, Huey P. Newton, he actually visited refugee camps in Lebanon, because he knew that the oppression that he felt back in Oakland or in California was the same oppression that these Palestinian people were going through. And even more recently, when you speak about 2014, when you heard about Gaza and stuff, what was happening here were the protests in Ferguson.
Yes.
And the militarization of the police in the United States. Meanwhile, the Palestinians, like on Twitter and social media, they noticed the riots, what was happening. They noticed the tear gas that was being used against the Black population in the United States was the exact same brand of tear gas used against Palestinians in 2014 during the war in Gaza.
Yep.
And they started tweeting out advice like do this, do that, so that it doesn't affect you as badly. So to me, it's like our causes are linked. Like, especially me as a Black Palestinian, I'm like, I cannot disassociate at all.
You can't.
Both causes. They're one in this. Like, they're two sides of the same coin. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Je pense que c'est important d'introduire le concept d'impérialisme. So, vraiment, impérialisme, c'est politique d'un État visant à réduire d'autres États sous la dépendance politique ou économique, souvent avec des forces militaires. Puis ça, c'est vraiment un peu ce que les Américains font, ou même les pays... Je ne vais même pas exclure le Canada, les pays vraiment de l'Ouest.
We're not any better.
Yeah.
Vraiment, les pays de l'Ouest, vraiment aller dans les autres pays, puis conquérir. Puis ce qui m'a vraiment frappée, c'est quand tu parlais des enfants et le fait que la police allait dans les écoles. Et c'est exactement la conversation qu'on avait durant le Black Lives Matter, le fait que la police est dans les écoles aux États-Unis and policing black babies. Et on ne les voit pas nécessairement comme des enfants, on les voit pas nécessairement comme juste des enfants, puis vraiment,
I mean, even
vraiment
in Canada,
tôt.
we just heard right now 215
You know?
babies,
Oui.
indigenous
You
babies
know?
were found
Yeah.
underneath a school that was built on this idea of settler colonialism, of white supremacy, of we know best, of you're the savages, of this is rhetoric that we hear over and over and over again. And who loses out every time? It's us, our babies, our culture, our heritage. And who gets out on top at the end of the day? It's the imperialists.
Exactement. Fait que c'est exactement les mêmes tactiques. C'est exactement les mêmes tactiques. Comme les enfants qu'on a retrouvés autochtones, I barely heard anything about it. C'était vraiment comme sur les médias sociaux, and I had to seek the information. Mais si on avait trouvé un cimetière de 215 enfants comme québécois, bro,
we wouldn't rest.
we would never hear the end, and rightfully so, because it's kids.
It's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
You know?
at the end of the day, you have somebody like Justin Trudeau who has the audacity to say it was a dark chapter in our history.
No, like
So I was gonna say something.
go
please,
for it.
like, please, like, no, but like, crack it, please. Like, honestly, like,
Yeah.
come on, like, come
Trust me.
on. Are you kidding me? This never ended just because we're not fighting. Like, that's one school, and it represents so much more than the murder of children. It is literally the system. You guys built reservation schools literally to do things like this. Don't come and tell me it's a dark chapter. You're not even addressing the the undrinkable water in the reservations right now, where natives can't even drink clean water. And you're talking about a dark history. It's happening right now. What are you doing right now to get
C'est
that?
exactement. Fait que c'est toujours la même tactique. Fait que c'est comme quand tu vois, il y a des enfants autochtones qui se font martyriser, il va y avoir des enfants noirs, des enfants palestiniens. When you say there's no water, there's no water.
And
Il y en a pas.
And Gaza
Il y en
does
a
not
pas.
have drinkable water either, by the way.
Yeah.
When I
And then-
went, it's basically ocean water that is barely
God.
desalinated. So it's very, very salty, very unhealthy. Like, I remember when I was with my cousin and we drank water and I was like, I spit it out. I was like, what? And for her, it was like completely normal. And I'm like, this is ocean water. And she's like, no, it's fine. Like, that's not healthy, but that's all they have.
Yeah, but then you could even link that to
To Flint.
Michigan.
Flint.
You know what I mean?
C'est
It's like
exactement.
everything is similar fights, and
Yeah.
Fait que c'est comme ça que when you see things like that, c'est pas des cas isolés. It's the same tactic.
Yep.
It's never
C'est
isolated.
c'est le même colonialisme. And c'est pour ça que c'est vraiment, vraiment, vraiment important to link fights. Et je pense que I think in the internet, tu sais, on parle de... Les gens vont dire POC solidarity, but that's not it. Parce que je trouve que ça reste en surface. And when they say POC solidarity, we don't tackle anti-blackness. Fait que it's off dès le début. Because
As soon as you see POC, people forget about black. Like, they sort of like...
yes.
Si on est partout, like you said, there's going to be anti-blackness everywhere.
Exactly.
Fait que c'est comme, c'est pas juste anti POC solidarity, c'est vraiment des mouvements anti-impérialistes, anti-colonialistes. Et quand on dit ça, we have to basically tackle race issues within this movement.
Yes.
Et là, on parle de anti-blackness. And when all these points are tackled, c'est vraiment plus facile d'avancer. Because, again, historiquement, when you see leaders like back then, what they try to do always, c'est faire des connexions with others. So, en 1960, Black Panthers came in Montreal. They went in Palestine. Ils parlaient de la guerre au Vietnam. Why?
Because it's all the same root. Like, I'm telling you, like, anti-blackness, it's a symptom. It's not like the cause.
Yes.
It's a and what it is a symptom of, the sickness itself is imperialism.
Yes.
Imperialism, settler colonialism, all of that is what kind of encourages and propagates anti-blackness, anti-queerness, homophobia, transphobia. All of that, in my humble opinion, is a symptom of the root cause, which is the imperialism.
And a really good... Vas-y.
OK, non, j'allais juste dire encore capitalism, mais...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a dollar bill. That's
la raison, you said that Israel receive 10 million a day, c'est les taxes des gens still.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they can't give stimulus checks to their own population, and they're trying to bring down $2,000 to $1,400 because, but they're okay with giving $10 million to a foreign country for their own interests and to keep an entire population of people oppressed.
And a really good book that talks about what we just mentioned is Angela Davis' book, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. And she talks about the importance of transnational solidarity and to not look at issues from a here perspective, but from a global perspective, like you said, because everything is interconnected. And to bring it back to Palestine, she was comparing Palestine to the United States and the prison industrial complex and like the, abolish the police movement and all of that and what's happening in Palestine. And she explained how there's the same global strategy that is shared throughout, and we're not looking at that. There's the same global strategy, and that strategy is to take the most disposable members of society and put them in what she refers to as a garbage bin. And the garbage bin is like prison, right? Or just being killed. Yeah. So let's get rid of the most disposable members of society to create this kind of like ideological illusion of this free, safe society. And that safe society is a capitalist society, is a white supremacist society, right? And it's literally, and she compared the United States, the prison industrial complex, to Palestine, and it works. It's the same global strategy in both scenarios. In the United States, let's over-police neighborhoods, let's kill Black people, let's get them off the streets to create this ideological utopia of what is a safe society, what is a peaceful society, but that society is just a white society, you know? And then Palestine, let's get rid of the Palestinians to create our utopian Jewish Israeli society. So it's all linked. And when we talked earlier about how Israel is incredibly funded and how they have good connections with the US, and you know, to this day, and it's also happened in the past, like the police officers in the United States, police chiefs, FBI agents, they're being trained by Israeli military. So it's like, if we're challenging if we're challenging Israel, we're also challenging police brutality. We're also challenging things. It's like it works together. And if you're pro prison, if you're pro destructing the prison industrial complex, by default you have to be pro Palestine. You know, it works together. And I think that's really important to talk about. And that's why I do believe that it's our problem as non-Palestinian Black people to care about Palestine. But I feel like the conversations are being had in a messy way by non-Black people. And I think that's the problem. And I think also that's why so many Black people are like, it's not my business, I'm not going to say shit. Because we can't, like you said, we can't tackle all these systems. We can't work towards efficiently destructing a system if we don't talk about anti-Blackness. And that's what's really bothering me, is the anti-Blackness discussion is not being had. And there's a sense of entitlement that I'm feeling a lot that makes me uncomfortable. You know, it really does make me uncomfortable. And I had this conversation with a couple of my friends, and they're like, listen, I wanted to share about Palestine, and then as soon as I was gonna share, I saw a tweet of like, "Oh, y'all Black people only care about yourselves."
I hate that. Like, honestly, I hate that.
Like,
shit.
it's Black Lives Matter, but then it's us, and they were like, you know what? Like, I didn't share my post after that, and it's like, we should share it, but like, I can't pretend like I don't understand where you're coming from, you know, by being like, I'm not gonna do anything, because we suffer anti-Blackness at the hands of these same people that are asking for our hand in this. And it's like we cannot have the sense of entitlement. We have to tackle anti-blackness. Anti-blackness didn't finish. Like the way that the conversations are being had is as if like Black Lives Matter been ended.
And like we won something.
It's like it's like, girl, like niggas is dying, still to this day, fam. Like, let's talk about it. Like, we can't, like, just recently, like, vous avez vu qu'est-ce qui s'est passé en France, genre the freaking
The Cela?
Like the Uber fucking delivery guy.
Oui.
Puis c'est comme, that was, did you see that?
I did not see that.
Like,
no, it's a Uber, I think it's a Uber driver who came somewhere, just deliver, faire sa job.
and
like,
he just insulted the hell out of a Black
Yeah.
woman, literally called her like slaves, like I'll kill you, like my family, like things like that. And it was really, really bad. And
No, it was bad. It was bad. I was shocked.
it was really, really bad.
That's
and it's
horrible.
Yeah, and it's like, these are just examples of like things that we see often, things that, you know, I've dealt with anti-Blackness at the hands of the same groups that are entitled to the support and are saying it in a off-putting way. And, you know, we have to tackle anti-Blackness. And I feel like there's a discomfort, especially because the Arab population is a marginalized group and they are suffering from racism at the hands of white people. Mm-hmm. They are. And it's really bad. And I feel like whenever you're a marginalized group, it's hard to put out the fact that you are also an oppressor. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have. Even as Black people, you know, there's different systems of oppression that I uphold, and we can feel uncomfortable talking about it because it's like, okay, but fuck, I'm oppressed, but like I still oppressed, you know. And we have to have these conversations, and I feel like that's not being had, and it's messy.
Je trouve que les gens sont très dismissive.
Yeah.
Comme à chaque fois qu'on mentionne quelque chose, we're like, that kind of hurt. Like, what I heard, qu'est-ce que j'entends, qu'est-ce que je vois. And it's like, okay, but there's, okay, il y a beaucoup d'affaires qui se disent, tu ne peux pas généraliser, but I have to. I have to generalize. Je sais, quand on parle de système d'oppression, you have to generalize actually, parce que c'est un système and it touch like people. So, il faut que je généralise. And je pense que la réponse that I'm waiting for some Black people to have, or just comme, que j'ai pas vraiment entendu, c'est comme, that I say, well, there's anti-Blackness like in your community, and you have to say it's totally true. Like, it's totally true, and let's work to dismantle.
Non-Black people have a hard time admitting that their communities can be anti-Black.
Yeah.
That totally. Like, I see that in the Arab community, unfortunately. They totally see the fact that they're oppressed, but they don't kind of see that they can also be, they have prejudice and bias and anti-Blackness within them. But first off, I want to address something like the whole showing up thing. Like, Black people been showing up. Like, Black people have been showing up for a very long time. Like, we are always kind of like we birth movements, and very often they're taken from us and they're watered down, they're reappropriated. I mean, it happened with BLM as well.
Yeah.
So we have to, first of all, put that to rest. Black people been showing up. They've been showing up for all sorts of causes. And like we talked about the Black Panther Party with the Palestinian cause, the same thing with Malcolm X and the Palestinian cause. And Angela Davis, like you said, she was, you know, like very pro-Palestinian before she even wrote that book. And with what happened in Ferguson, like she came out with that, freedom is a constant struggle. So yeah, Black people have been showing up. The other thing I wanted to say is there is anti-Blackness in the Arab community, just like there is anti-Blackness in many other communities, but we have to sort of understand that not all Arabs are Palestinian. Like, Palestine is a country, so it's a Palestinian country, and in the country, those people, much like Black people in the West, have been working to dismantle the system that oppresses them. And that system is the one that oppresses them as Arabs, that oppresses the Black Arab as well, the Black Palestinian. It represses everybody in that, like we said, in that prison. So Palestinians been working at dismantling that system. And like we said, the system is global, right?
Yeah.
And they do it within their own power, because at the end of the day, Palestinians have no economic power, they have no social power, they have no political power. But they still resist every single day, and they show up every single day to try to dismantle that system.
I think once we have a better understanding of how, like, I'm really glad that we're talking about how the Black Lives Matter movement really, like, Black people really birthed many movements. And if you're looking at like Ferguson, you definitely said that, right? That the Palestinian protesters were communicating via tweets. Like there was a hashtag to Ferguson from Palestine, giving them clear tips. And Angela Davis was talking about how she felt so hopeful that even Black Lives Matter protesters around that time traveled to Palestine to be able to see how they could organize and try to dismantle the military-industrial complex as well as the prison-industrial complex. And if you looked at any Black Lives Matter activists around the Ferguson time, if you go on their bio on their social media, free Palestine.
Ouais.
It's like it's so together. Both groups were so together. It's really important to note that. Like, and there's a reporter for CNN who was very pro Black Lives Matter that lost his job because he was pro Palestine.
Are you talking about Mark Lamont Hill?
Yes.
Yeah.
He lost his job. Angela Davis was like revoked an award or something that,
Ouais,
you know,
on peut pas lui donner.
It's like the black, like if you really look at the root of Black Lives Matter is 100% pro Palestine.
100%. I had something to say and I forgot. Ah oui, par rapport aux Palestiniens, I think t'as mentionné exactement ce que je voulais mentionner. The fact that they're really going through it and they were like, oh, let's tweet because I can see.
Yeah.
And I think c'est un peu le même. It's the same with Black people dans le sens que comme when you take so much shit, it's really easier for you to understand what's like the struggle of others.
Yeah.
So Black people being so low in that like rank, c'est pour ça que comme we're gonna push every movement.
Yeah.
Like you cannot tell, oh I didn't hear Black people say no, they did. Like et souvent c'est historique. Like,
Yeah.
we name people. Like,
Yeah.
There is a movement we haven't
historique.
talked about.
And I think it's the same with Palestine. Like when you take so much shit for so long, pour eux it was not like it was not crazy to just like tweet like, oh damn, this is happening.
Like watch out,
watch out for this.
We know this.
They've been through it.
Yeah, even the murder of George Floyd and the tactic that was used, Palestinians immediately recognized it because kneeling on the neck is something that they do in Israel all the time. So it was nothing new to Palestinians. They've been seeing that shit. Like it's not like when I tell you our struggles are linked, I mean they are linked.
Yeah.
Even the way they kill us is similar.
Yeah. Oh my God.
C'est deep. Ouais.
And also to Black people who have like not like Black people who aren't Palestinian who have a like comment dire they're not like réticence to join you, like there are Black Palestinians too, you know.
Let's get into that. Let's actually get into that. So we participate in the erasure of, I feel like so many people have participated in the erasure of Afro Palestinians and the pro-Palestine movement. So in what ways are we participating in that erasure?
You specifically? Well, first of all, again, thank you like for coming out and checking for me, because like this past month is the first time people were checking for Afro Palestinians. Because again, I will credit Black Lives Matter for that, because that is the intersectionality that it began and that it started to say, okay, let's look outwards. The Black struggle is like global, so let's look at that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a bit more like people trying to check for Afro-Palestinian, for the actual voices of the people who go through it, which is amazing. But as far as erasure goes, I mean, Palestinian been erased, like just in general, like forget white or Black, like Palestinians been erased from the narrative. We're not even on the map. You know, like I grew up in I literally grew up in the mentality that I did not exist. Like,
yeah,
my parents put this Palestinian pride in me and made it very important that I know where I come from. But every time I look at a map, every time I go to white dominant spaces, I'm not there. I don't see myself. I don't see myself on the map. It's written Israel. Well, I know my family was there before Israel was created.
It's crazy.
And even like something as small as like being, you know, when you go to a gym or something and they have like flags of all of all the places.
Your flag is not there.
ever since I was a baby girl, I was looking for the Palestinian flag, and I've never ever found it. I never, to this day, like I look and I'm like, I know my flag's not going to be there. So that's the kind of mentality we have to grow up with. We are erased by design. Like literally, it is by design that the powers that be want you to believe that Palestinians don't exist, and people will repeat that false rhetoric all the time. Oh, you don't exist. Palestinians never existed. You were under the Ottoman Empire. You were under. Nobody talking about empires right now. We're talking about people. Like as a people, we were there.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to kind of live in a world that just doesn't recognize your heritage or your culture at all. But the hope that I have is now I'm seeing more and more people, because of the internet, because of social media, because of things like Black Lives Matter, where more and more people are waking up, and the more they read about what's going on, and the more they read about what's going on here versus there, the more they see, c'est pas vraiment différent qu'est-ce qui se passe. Like the oppressive people oppress in a very similar way anywhere you go, and the people being oppressed are victims in the same way anywhere you go. They lose their identity, they lose either their culture, their political power, just all of that. So there has been a lot of erasure for Palestinians, and when you go into it and you speak about Black Palestinians, I mean,
It's like, what?
What? I mean, I don't even know. Like, honestly, I think my family might be the only Black Palestinian family in Montreal. Like, I don't even growing up, like, I'll give you an example. I grew up very much in the Arab community, because my parents, they, like, sent me to Arabic school and stuff like that, so I can learn. And everyone at my school was white. Like they were Arab, yes, but they were white Arabs. Like, they were light-skinned. They did not look like me. You know, they did not. I could see that there was a difference in the way we viewed the world and the way we seen the world. But again, like, yes, we exist. We're here, and we are part of the fight, and we're part of the resistance, and we always have been, and we will be until the fight is won.
Je pense when we started, t'as dit que Trump avait dit que Jérusalem is now la capitale d'Israël.
Ouais.
Et t'es comme, non, Jérusalem was, comme c'est la capitale de Palestine. And I swear I never heard that. I never heard Jérusalem c'est la capitale de Palestine. Like, never. It was always like Jérusalem. Je suis comme, c'est en Israël.
Yeah.
It's always, this was the link in my head.
It's where, you know the dome of the rock, like with the where there was like actually Israeli went into the mosque. And, that's Al-Quds, that's in Jerusalem, and that's like a very, very holy place for Muslims, you know. And yeah, it was always considered like the capital of Palestine. And then what do you have? You have some white oppressor from the United States who is backed by the power that he has as an oppressor. He comes in and he declares this. Genre, t'es qui toi pour dire que... Le pire, c'est que he has the power. And because he said that, then, okay, that was the whole plan. The whole plan was to declare it the capital of Israel. So, okay, now, when Jewish people start going there, then it'll be normal. When we drive the Palestinian people out more and more, we keep them a minority, we keep them in check, we remove some rights here and there, and we're good to go, you know? But people are waking up. They're seeing that this is not right.
Puis, il faut comprendre une chose qui est vraiment, vraiment importante de comprendre. On a parlé beaucoup de comme c'est un problème global. The oppressors know, like, les oppresseurs sont, like, they're tied. Like, they're backing each other's up already. So, c'est comme des pays comme le Canada ou les États-Unis vont déjà back up Israël. Like, ils comprennent déjà que c'est global. I feel like it's the oppressed. It's not our fault, c'est vraiment parce qu'on est oppressed, like, and we have like shit to do. Puis c'est vraiment dur pour nous de voir ça d'une façon globale, and I think the system is made that way.
Oh yeah, they're trying to separate us. I mean, you didn't even know. Did you know that Black Palestinians existed 2 years ago? Like, were you even checking for that? You know, because, right, like, look at us, girls, like, come on, Blackness is everywhere. And once we realize this, that's when we start to realize that you're my kin, you're my sisters. Yes. We're all part of the same struggle. And that's what the oppressors literally work day and night to separate us. Yeah. They work day and night to make us think that moi, je suis différente de toi.
Yes.
Toi, t'es différente de elle.
Individualism is sold to us because it works in their favor.
Oh, yeah.
It works as soon as people get together, solidarity is the one thing that can that they fear the most.
They fear so much. And look, Canada is another settler colonial state. So obviously they're going to support a settler colonial state. It makes sense.
Yeah. C'est la même chose parce que les Palestiniens sont literally the indigenous of the land. La même façon que les indigenous here are
So we're seeing it happen in real time. And when Trudeau says a dark chapter, and then in his next tweet he congratulates the Israeli prime minister for something, you're like, come on, disconnect somewhere. There's a disconnect.
But it's all interconnected. I'm really glad that we're talking about that because all struggles are interconnected. That's why it's really all of our problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
C'est ça. Fait que si les oppresseurs, comme tu as dit, Canada qui félicite l'État d'Israël et tout, when they, even in the universities, I remember, je me souviens Concordia avait invité un homme who was a Zionist to talk. Mais I was so confused. I was just to me, it was just a Jewish man coming to talk. But j'ai vu les Palestiniens de Concordia protester really heavily, no, this is not...
Because he's not promoting Judaism. Again, he's promoting Zionism, which is a political ideology of supremacy. So you have to keep that in mind. And that's why Palestinians, they show up at Concordia a lot, for that. And,
they do. Fait que il faut vraiment voir ça, que comme quand on parle, ou comme quand les gens parlent de l'État d'Israël en tant que tel, c'est des colons. C'est des colons. The same way. Puis c'est normal que comme quand tu vois, si on voit le drapeau d'Israël, en plus, you don't even see your flag. C'est comme... Je pense que on doit vraiment le voir comme nous, quand on voit nos oppresseurs, comme les autochtones voient les Canadiens, the way we talk about it, c'est vraiment, vraiment, vraiment important qu'on fasse cette connexion. But it's coming, I feel.
It's happening. I see it happening more now. More people are realizing what's happening. When this happened in Gaza in 2014, le monde était encore vraiment complicated. I don't really know what's going on. But now more and more, they're okay, there's an obvious imbalance of power here. One side has the power to end it, and one side is literally resisting, and you are treating it as the same. You are qualifying the people who resist as terrorists when all they're doing is trying to fight for their land. And by the way, according to international law, if you are an occupier, the people you occupy have a right to resist. They absolutely have a right to resist. So Palestinians, resistance is in our blood at this point.
Mais c'est pour ça que je trouve... C'est pour ça que... Tu as dit en 2014, it was not that. Puis ça aurait jamais... C'est comme si on n'aurait jamais pu même imaginer que comme how it would be. En 2014, Black Lives Matter was not popular either. Je me souviens being Black Lives Matter and having people that I know be are you sure?
It was controversial to say Black Lives Matter.
But then it becomes trendy. Then you have every Becky out there saying Black Lives Matter. We're happy and
But you could you were really lynched if you said that.
Tu finissais pas avec les arguments.
C'est ça.
But the fact that c'est ça qui est, je pense que aussi il faut retirer le fait que the fact that Black Lives Matter was so a gagné autant de reconnaissance and people understanding what it is, et que comme ça it shed light on every other movement.
But that's the thing, because at the end of the day, black liberation, in my opinion, is what's needed in order for every other.
Period.
And that's why Black Lives Matter, Becky, not all lives. That's why Black Lives Matter, because we understand that every society, as advanced as they say, if you look at how they treat their black population, if there's something wrong there, that means that it's not as democratic as you think it is. It's not as free as you think it is. Because you are treating your black population, which is historically has been oppressed to unimaginable levels. Once you fix that, it all falls into place. You know? That's how I see it.
I really, first of all, yes, because,
c'était le lien quoi?
Yes, because it's 100%. The freedom of all marginalized communities is completely tangled with Black liberation.
Absolutely.
And it goes hand in hand. And from what you said, I was doing research on there's a place called the African Quarter in Jerusalem that was mainly made up of Afro Palestinians. And that community is very, very resilient, and they are very active in the pro-Palestine movement. And there's an organization there called the African Community Society that they kind of like just do, they help at-risk youths, and they create like support groups for people that are dealing with like violence, death, things like that. And that group was arrested a lot for doing basic things, as if like during COVID, handing out masks and handing out sanitizer and things like that. So one of the founder of that movement actually had and made a statement talking about Fatima Bernaoui.
Yes, I love that you brought her up.
Yes. She is an Afro Palestinian activist. She was arrested. She really was part of the Palestine liberation movement. And this is what he said, and I thought it was really interesting, so I wrote that down. If you go back to the first Palestinian woman ever arrested by the Israelis, Fatima Bernaoui, you will find that not only was she of African descent, but also an inhabitant of the African corridor where we currently live. Mm-hmm. Our struggle for freedom and for the creation of an independent Palestinian state is also our way out of discrimination and economic hardship we face as people of African descent.
There you go, 100%.
Yeah.
They just released another I'll say Afro-Jordanian, although he is Palestinian. You have to understand Palestinians became refugees, and they kind of went into Jordan, into Lebanon, into Syria, but we're all Palestinian at the end of the day. I don't want to get his name wrong. I think it's Abdullah Abu Jaber, who was just released literally a couple of days ago from 20 years in the Israeli prison. A black Palestinian man who was fighting in the resistance, and he was arrested for 20 years on charges of terrorism. And he was only allowed visitation twice.
Oh my God.
And he came out, and everybody was around him. And the first thing he said when he was free was that resistance is the only form of, he said, resistance is the way towards our liberation. So basically, after 20 years in jail, he said, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, kept that same energy. It's incredible. Like Afro-Palestinians have done so much for the movement, and I feel like it's so easy to participate in the erasure because, again, anti-blackness is global, and we as non-Palestinian Black people do that by, saying, it's not my fight, I'm gonna mind my black ass business and not care about Palestine. First of all, we should care regardless, and we've spoken about that, of how all issues are interconnected. But on top of that, by saying because we're black we should stick to the side, we're essentially completely erasing a type of black identity. And I think the other group as well, not non-black people, tend to participate in your erasure by doing the comparison of like, oh, when it's black people, but when it's us, but it's like us includes black people.
That's right. So, like that's it. At the end of the day, c'est pas plus compliqué que ça.
Yeah.
Like, you have to understand our fight is global, and our kinship is also global. Like, we are, at least that's why I believe, like, to me, you ladies, like, we don't have the exact same history, but it's parallel, it's similar. Yes. You can draw conclusions from it, you can draw similarities, and at the end of the day, it's really the fight against the oppressor. We need as many people for that. And as many people as possible for that. To understand that, like, oh, no, it is your fight. It is your fight, even though it doesn't affect you directly. It's going to affect you in a couple years, because whatever weapons they're trying out in Gaza are going to come. They're going to cross the Atlantic, and they're going to come and visit you one day.
Wow, facts.
So think about that. Like, there's no weapon or military tactic or whatever in the United States that's not tested out somewhere. I'm not going to say all in Israel, in Palestine, but across the world. There's literally an Israeli company, a weapons company, that says it's human tested as a way to sell their product. It's human tested. Basically, it's tested on us.
That's crazy.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad that we got to see you. Pour vrai, when we asked, I was like, I hope that 20 million followers qu'on a, like, we have to find.
We need to find someone. I was like, there's no way there's not an Afro Palestinian that can come talk to us.
Here I am. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you guys are really the only family, but I'm so glad.
Probably not. Like, I'm exaggerating.
Have you ever met any like Afro Palestinians here? Yeah, you haven't.
Oh.
Okay.
No. in Palestine. Yeah, when I went, I visited my family.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
that's
For sure.
There's a black population, like you said, in the African quarters in East Jerusalem, but there's also a black population in Gaza. There are also black Israelis. At the end of the day, you have to think of that. And honestly, their treatment is not. It's like they have full rights as Israelis, but the same way black people have full rights here or in the United States.
No, I've definitely read stories about, I haven't read about the Afro-Israelis, but I've definitely read about Afro Palestinians and how it's really hard for them to navigate because they're so for their liberation, but they're not always seen by their peers. And on top of that, there's a double target on their back by the Israelis because first of all, they're Palestinian, second of all, they're black. And even Fatima Bernawi, who was a very, very important figure in the movement, definitely suffered from racism. She was a nurse. She wasn't even allowed to give shots. Like she suffered from racism.
My grandmother was also a nurse.
Really?
Yeah. She was one of the first black nurses in Gaza.
Way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and she would actually travel to Saudi Arabia and stuff to because she was one of the few who could speak English. So she would visit the dignitaries that would come to Saudi Arabia. So she would tend to the women, because it was gender separated. So black people been in Palestine. We've been doing it. We've been bosses. I'm telling you, it's part of the same fight. It's part of the same fight.
Yeah. So moving forward, do you feel hopeful now compared to, let's say, a couple years ago? Or how do you feel moving forward?
The same way I felt about what happened last summer with the whole awakening, in a sense, of the Black Lives Matter. I'll say it's a cautious optimism.
That's a good way to put it. I think that's such a good way to put it. Yeah. Cautious optimism.
Yeah, because I'll give you just to finish everything off. We have a symbol in Palestine, which is a little boy who has his back, all you see is just his back to the wall, and he's just standing like that. And it's a symbol for us of we don't care about the oppressors. We're looking straight ahead. We're like this, and we're not acknowledging the oppressors. We're not acknowledging that. Now it was created by a Palestinian artist decades ago, and it's been that symbol forever. And all of a sudden now in 2021, he updated it. He updated that picture of the same boy like this, but he's looking like this. He just changed because he sees some hope. So this is the hopeless, and now he's so one day we hope to
turn around completely.
Turn around to our freedom.
Oh my God.
So that's how I feel.
That was beautiful.
Ouais,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This conversation was incredibly necessary. Ouais. First of all, to understand what's happening in Palestine, and second of all, to really hear from the unheard of, basically. It's Afro Palestinian. I feel so honored to have you, because your perspective was really needed. I feel like that you're gonna speak as much as you haven't met any Afro Palestinians here. I feel like you're at least I hope at least one Afro-Palestinian person could hear you and feel heard and felt and represented. So I'm really grateful for that.
I hope so too.
Yeah, je suis vraiment reconnaissante aussi parce que I feel like sur notre podcast, we really want to shed light with issues that happens here parce que there was really, quand on a commencé, it was not really black voices talking about what's going on here, comme beaucoup aux États-Unis, but not here.
Yes.
Puis I'm so glad parce que there's come a point que genre you understand that everything is connected. Comme quand tu rentres dans everything that's social justice, puis when you read, on a beaucoup dit Malcolm X, comme the Black Panthers, and I often, puis je voyais beaucoup que comme they made connection with people around the globe. So the struggle is global.
Yes, and that's what the oppressor feels. When you start linking, they fear that.
That's why they did
our solidarity.
That's why they did.
Yeah, literally.
That's why they did. Yeah. Message. I'm so glad. I feel like you are the first guest who we made that connection with.
Yeah, that's what I've been feeling the whole episode. I was like, shit, this is like the click, you know?
Right.
This is really the click.
Honestly, my entire reason for being here is to I'm if one person can just come out of this understanding our point of view, our experience, then I would have done my job.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
Yeah, fake. I'm so grateful for that click, and I hope that people that are gonna listen to that episode gonna get the click.
Yeah, it's all linked. Like it wouldn't have hit the same if we were just talking about it. Like, girl, shut up. Like, bitch, if you don't get a guess, like, come on. Yeah. So I feel like I got the click. Even me knowing, I still felt like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'm so happy, like, you specifically asked for Afro Palestinian voices.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously it offers another layer of intersectionality of just Palestinian and Black. No, there are Black Palestinians. They're like, you have to understand, like I said, and I'll say it again and again and again, our fight is global.
We only had Black guests.
Yeah, literally.
And we take pride in this.
Yes.
So we wanted to center
awesome.
Black voices again.
Voices.
Like, we know there exists. So
Yeah. And I'm glad that we kept it, like, we got to keep going, like, all Black.
That's right.
What you mean? So again, Samah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough. I cannot wait for this episode to be released. And also, thank you for being our comeback, because we've been on like a hiatus, and I'm so happy that this is our first episode back.
Oh my God, I'm so honored. Thank you.
For real.
Thank you. I've had a blast just chatting with you ladies, and I hope you learned something new today.
I did.
I definitely did.
Yes, and just like keep that mentality like going forward in your everyday fight, you know?
Perfect. So on that note, I'm Titi.
And I'm Beg.
And we're what the kids call
Whateva.